It's been a really fun study because I spent a lot of the week researching and thinking about what is in my mind. What is it like to be a human who's experiencing thoughts? And as I spent some time, and when was the last time you ever did that? You're like, never. I mean, who does that? Maybe some psychologist or a philosopher does that. But I spent a lot of time just trying to understand what was going on in my head. And this is what I found. I did a bunch of research and stuff, but really what I found is that there are three predominant things going on in our minds every single day. First is what you could call the grounding principle of the mind, which is your overarching intellect. This is just the general intelligence that you have, the capacity for intelligence. Some people have really high IQs, some people have lower IQs, some people have a great capacity to retain information. Other of us, you just can't remember anything. So you have the grounding principle of your intellect, the grounding principle of your mind, which is just the intellect in general. Then secondly, you have the specific or focused principles of your mind, which I would call your awareness or your mindfulness. These are the things that you notice, the things that you perceive. So this is what I would call the specific or the focused principle of your mind, which in the course of every given day, we all perceive and notice and focus on different things. And if you really look at your thought life, what you'll find is that for a lot of us, certain things end up becoming patterned. We have pattern awarenesses, where there's things that we just have a tendency to notice all the time. These are our leanings. So you get your intellect, generally speaking, is the foundation, just your ability to think. Then you have awareness or mindfulness, which are the things that you focus on. And then with that, the third thing is the running internal commentary on these two principles. This is your thought life in general. In a lot of ways, in our minds function in a lot of ways like your favorite political or economic or even any show where there's a number of commentators. If you like sports, there's always the color commentator and there's the play-by-play person, where one person tells you everything that's happening, the other person just fills in the details. In all of our minds, not only is there our general ability to think and the specific things that we're aware of, but there is a running commentary in all of our minds. And for most of us, that internal commentary is the thing that is the most noticeable. And in a lot of ways, if you ever notice a good commentary show, there's a number of commentators, aren't there? And in a lot of ways, they're opposing each other. That's what makes these commentaries fun to watch. And you watch these political shows, and of course, they get people and they're arguing and they're yelling and they have different positions and things that they value. And that's what makes them, for us, entertaining. And what's kind of scary is that if you spend some time becoming acquainted with your own in-house commentary of your thought life, you'll find that a lot of times you have the same thing going on. You have a number of commentators. And those commentators value and care about different things. So, because of these three things, the overarching intellect, our awareness and our mindfulness, and then our thought life, which is our in-house commentator, these three things inform our decision-making, the way we reason things, our biases. And the reality is to love God with all of your mind means to let God be glorified by both our overarching intellect, by our awareness, the things that we focus on, and worshiping God through the in-house commentary of our minds. That's what it means to love God with all of your mind. To let the overarching intellect be under the authority to God's glory, be focused on praising Jesus, to have the things that we're aware of, our awareness to be God-saturated, God-conscious. Because the reality is no matter what's going on, God is involved, intimately involved, in everything in our lives. God is at work through the struggles of this life. And for a lot of us, you can look at the last 24 hours, you can say, I had no awareness of God. At all. That the whole day I had all these things and I had not one thought. I didn't see God's fingerprints in one place all day yesterday. And then, of course, letting God be glorified in the commentary in our lives. And so what's amazing is I found scriptures that kind of reference all these things. So we're going to spend some time kind of walking through them. And again, I'm going to take all your questions. So the first thing, it's the key to the intellect. And really you find this in Psalm 111, verse 10. It says, quite simply, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And now we all know that wisdom is a component of the mind. Wisdom is right understanding and a right application of the way that things really are. And for each one of us, in order for us to worship God and love God with all of our minds, the overarching intellect, the grounding principle of the mind needs to be rooted in the fear of God. Now, I don't know about you guys, but right as I hear that and I read these things, that fearing God is the beginning of wisdom and stuff, I think to myself, well, who wants to do that? I mean, when was the last time you woke up and said, I just want to fear God today? I remember there's a great book by Jerry Bridges called The Joy of Fearing God. It was not a bestseller. and it was written a long time ago, and if he would have written it today, there's no way the publishers would have let him release it with that title. Because you go into a bookstore and you see The Joy of Fearing God sitting next to 3 Steps to Lead a Happy, Jolly, Kumbaya Life. You're definitely not going to choose The Joy of Fearing God to bring home with you. But the reality is that fearing God is the beginning of wisdom. Why? Why is the fear of God the beginning of wisdom? Because it is the most important reality by which to understand the world. And that idea of fearing God doesn't mean that we're terrified of God. It means we give God His rightful place of honor and respect as He deserves it. See, we struggle as humans to honor God with the honor that He deserves because we have the ability not to. I'll give you a simple example about something as simple as fearing authority. And if you've been here, you've heard this before. It's the simplest example. Sure enough, I'm driving over here this morning, and you know, we're always kind of in a rush to get over here, so I'm not exactly going slow. I'm not breaking the law either, but I'm kind of on the edge, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, I look in my rearview mirror, and what do I see in the left-hand lane about 50 yards behind me? California Highway Patrol. And what's the first heart reaction? Fear, right? Once the fear jumps, what do I do next? I look at my speedometer. Why? Because I know at that moment that policeman, if I'm exceeding the speed limit or doing something else wrong, he can come up behind me, he can turn the little lights on, he can pull me over. He has the authority to pass judgment on my actions. And if you're driving around, you do the same thing, right? No matter, even if you're driving 10 miles under the speed limit, the cop gets behind you, you still get scared, right? You run through all the things. Is my taillights out? Did I change lanes without my blinker? I mean, we run through the whole list. Why? Because we know that policeman has the authority under law to pass judgment on my actions. And that's a fearful thing, right? And that's fearful for all of us. Even if you have like a PBA card in your car. You don't want to get pulled over. You don't have to pull that PBA card and be like, hey, listen, I know a cop. Let me go. See, we fear authority in that way because we know the cop can do that, right? And if we're going to fear a cop who can give us a citation and a fine, how much more should we fear the person who, in the end of the day, gives us the final report card of our lives? Who looks at our lives, all that's contained within it, and determines what that life was all about.